And you can see that Lindsey Jordanic has her wetsuit still around the below her torso. You can see her and Aaron Story running out together as we see Sonia Kent of the Indy Cats now finishing that swim leg. We are getting into the start of the bike course for the second athlete, the females. And we will be back in just one moment.
Yo, what's up? Good to see you.
So we have a special guest on the show today. 2016 U.S. Olympian in the Rio Olympics, Joe Malloy, is with us. He will add some flavor to the broadcast. I know you guys are probably all getting bored of hearing my voice, but Joe is from Wildwood Crest, New Jersey, I believe, which is just south of Atlantic City. And Joe will be able to give some incredible athlete insight. I race a bit myself, but Joe has been at the highest level of this sport, and he knows exactly what all these athletes are going through right now. So, Joe, what do you think, first of all, about having a race on the boardwalk in Atlantic City?
I'll tell you what. Well, first off, Dylan, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here as a guest on this broadcast. Having this triathlon here in Atlantic City means a lot to our area, to triathlon in our area. I think I'm trying to describe the ambiance here. You hear the announcer say, "Come cheer these athletes on," and I heard a guy walking down the boardwalk saying, "I'm going to beer them on right now." And we just saw a bachelor party walk by, and these are people who wouldn't normally come out to a triathlon, and they're getting into it.
Exactly. So one of the biggest goals with Major League Triathlon, with this company that Daniel and Sarah Cassidy created just over a year ago, is to make the sport more popular as an entertainment property. So you might look at basketball, football, baseball. People go that don't even ever play that sport. They might not even know how to play it, but they go because they watch, they know it'll be exciting. Here, we are trying to do the same thing with triathlon. So, Joe, you've seen this bike course, and we know it's 4 laps of about 700 meters or so per length. So the lap in total is just under a mile. It's about 1,400 meters, as we see Lindsey Jordanic of the Cleveland Rock and Roll and Aaron Story of the Carolina Gliders finishing their first of 4 laps. Every time they go through one of these turns, of which there are 8 in total on this course, they have to get up out of their saddle and really put some power down. How tough is that going to be to run after for these athletes?
That makes it brutal. All those accelerations and the power spikes are what I think what most triathletes don't realize. That's what takes it out of your legs. It's not these guys and girls are so fit that they could maintain a very solid power output that's relatively constant for a long time, but a course like this will tire them out more than just a steady state effort, and it'll make it very difficult to run after.
Absolutely. So you heard it here from Joe. This is going to be a brutal run, and you can see now there are literally thousands of people lining this Major League Triathlon Atlantic City presented by the Claridge Radisson Hotel race course. We are stretching our race course from just south of Kennedy Plaza, up the boardwalk, past the Playground Pier, which is across the boardwalk from Caesars Palace, up to Bally's Beach Bar. So Caesars, Bally's, and the Claridge Radisson Hotel, who is their presenting sponsor at this event, they are all some of the oldest hotels on the boardwalk. And they're all actually connected to one another. I realized the other day you can walk indoors over a mile. You go through about 10 different casinos, which are tough to not stop by, but I know these athletes have been having a little bit of fun down there. One of the athletes, AJ Baco, it was his birthday yesterday, as was Jason West, but I caught AJ down trying to win some money for his birthday. So it looks like Lindsey Jordanic has now separated herself from Aaron Story, and this is pretty big. It's tough to go out these courses alone, but I think, Joe, maybe Lindsey thinks that her technical skills on the bike, the speed at which she can carry through these turns she might be better off distancing herself from second place.
It does. It looks like that's what Lindsey's thinking there, and probably in the back of her mind, she knows Aaron Story is a phenomenal runner and wants to put some distance between her and Aaron for her teammates going
Absolutely.
into the final 2 legs.
So we're just over halfway through this bike course. For the top 2 athletes, who are Lindsey Jordanek, of the Cleveland Rock and Roll, and Aaron Story of the Carolina Gliders. It looks like the Sarasota Sun with Teresa Groton, who is replacing Caitlin Donner, are still in third. And we see this athlete coming here is Sonia Kent, I believe. And Sonia is replacing Megan Foley, who unfortunately recently broke her collarbone in a training ride. So it was a tough loss for their team, but Sonia actually just did her first ITU race at the Continental Cup in Richmond, Virginia, and she was 10th place, which is a very strong performance for an athlete's first race. So she's definitely a good asset to her team, even though she is new and this is her debut as an MLT athlete. So, Joe, I think one of the things that the visitors would really appreciate knowing, the listeners of this, watchers, viewers of this broadcast, you were an Olympian. You competed at the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Summer Olympic Games, and that experience must have been phenomenal. Joe was the top American in that race. Can you tell us a little bit about how that experience on the beach and in the ocean there, which also was the Atlantic Ocean, maybe differed a little bit from this course?
Yeah, that's a good point. It was different but the same, and in a lot of ways, it's. I think what gets me excited about coming to see an event like this, obviously there's only one Olympics, but being able to see triathlon here raced as a team, and we take another look at is that Lindsay going around the corner?
Yes, it is.
But being able to see it in a team environment where guys and girls are competing together, it makes it less about kind of that individuality and competing at the Olympics. While it's incredible that you're representing your country, it's also very isolating, and for me, it was a lonely experience because you're there and you're with your teammates, but at the end of the day you're competing against them, and it's in a weird irony, you're surrounded by more people, but you're more alone.
That's a great point, and one of the things that differs a little bit about this experience, as Joe just mentioned, that racing at the Olympics was a little bit isolating, is that all of these athletes are on 4-person teams, and their success, the prize money they win from this race, is directly tied into how their team finishes at the end of those 4 legs. So even though Joe mentioned he was racing for his country, these athletes are racing for their teams, really. And as we see Lindsey Jordanek, who is the first female racing for the Cleveland Rock and Roll today, we will quickly go through the second legs for each of these teams. I believe the Carolina Gliders are still in second place, and we've mentioned her a lot. That is Aaron Story. Moving on next, the Sarasota Sun are racing Teresa Groton in their second leg. So Teresa was the swimmer at West Point, and she's now a professional triathlete. She actually competed in her first ITU race just a few weeks ago in Richmond as well. The Colorado Peaks' second leg is Brittany Worley. Brittany lives and trains in Colorado Springs with Ken Axford and the Peak Performance team. She is an athlete that had a great showing at MLT Charlotte and led her team to a second place finish. We can see Vanessa de la Torre of Guadalajara, Mexico, is heading out onto the run in fourth place now for her team, third place, and she is representing the Atlantic City Waves. So she's actually on that home team, though she is wearing her country's uniform today, similar to what she would wear in an ITU or International Triathlon Union race. So first 4 teams right now out on the first lap of the run course are the Cleveland Rock and Roll, the Carolina Gliders, the Atlantic City Waves, and the Sarasota Sun. Let's mention the other teams who have their second leg. So here we go. I just introduced Brittany Worley. So the Colorado Peaks are heading out onto the course right now. Looks like in 6th place. And I believe I saw the Indy Cats, Sonia Kent, out onto the run course as well. Sonia Kent is part of the Nor'easter Tri group. She lives and trains just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. You can see Kent on the back of her suit there. And she is just followed by Erica Ackerland, who is the first individual NCAA champion in triathlon. She's representing the California Cadence. The only other team we have not seen on the screen just yet, their second leg, the Puerto Rico Islanders, are being the second leg for them is Megan Easler. Megan is a student athlete at Iowa State University and recently took 4th place in the draft legal event at the USA Triathlon Collegiate Club National Championships. So Joe, we have this 3-loop run course. We talked about the 180s on the bike. There we see Megan Easler of the Puerto Rico Islanders. These athletes all have to complete 4 laps of this. And we talked about those sharp turns on the bike course. What is the difference between maybe the power that you have to put out on the bike and losing energy from that versus slowing down, turning around on the run, and then getting back up to your running speed? How would you equate those at all, or what do you think is the most difficult aspect about that versus maybe, say, a straight mile run?
Oh, it changes it entirely, in my opinion. I think when you're going out for a straight run, you can kind of set yourself into a rhythm, and you almost are able to turn your mind off. But all these U-turns, what they do to the athletes is, I think they're going to be fighting for position if they're running in a pack. And if they're running alone, they have to slow down, stop, turn, and race in the complete opposite direction. You said 3 laps, so they're doing that a couple of times. And for the average listener, if you picture somebody stepping in front of you when you're going out for a run, and how hard it is to then get back into it and find that rhythm again, it's difficult. And these guys, this is, it's the end of their leg and they're tired already.
Absolutely. They've swum hard, ridden hard on their bikes, and now they're running as hard as they can. So we see the finish order after the second bike leg just left the screen, but we have a relatively tight-knit race still here for you folks. Lindsey Jordanek of the Cleveland Rock and Roll has distanced herself from Erin Story of the Carolina Gliders. They started their legs together. And it looks like, I think, talking back about the run and those 180-degree turns, you mentioned that the athletes lose their momentum. So if you have any people who are track and field fans, think of it similar to maybe running a steeplechase, where you have a wooden barrier every 80 meters over the course of a 3,000-meter race. Or maybe running suicides on a basketball court. You have to sprint, stop, turn around, get back up to speed, do the same thing over and over and over again. These athletes are making 6 180-degree turns on this run course. And Lindsey Jordanek just handed off to AJ Bacco. So the Cleveland Rock and Roll enter the 3rd leg in 1st place. Erin Story has about 10 to 15 seconds left of her run before she'll hand off to Graham Pimentel of the Carolina Gliders. He is a Charlotte boy. And he will get going now in 2nd place for their team. There he is in that Roka wetsuit.
I'll tell you what, such an impressive leg there by Lindsey Jordanek, being able to break away from Erin on the bike and then what looked like build a gap through the run.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Lindsey had the fastest female split at our first race in Charlotte just a couple of weeks ago. You know she's fit due to that, but Erin Story almost made the women's Olympic team just a year ago, so she is a phenomenal athlete, ladies and gentlemen. What Lindsey Jordanek did is truly remarkable, and she really is a huge asset to her team. We see Megan Easler of the Puerto Rico Islanders just finishing her leg, and I believe the Atlantic City Waves handed off in 3rd. So Vanessa de la Torre had a great leg. She handed off to Walter Schaefer, and now Teresa Groton of the Sarasota Sun handed off to Michael Arishida. of the same team. So the first 4 teams right now are, as it stands, the Cleveland Rock and Roll, the Carolina Gliders, the Atlantic City Waves, the home team, putting up a good show for their home advantage. And then the Sarasota Sun are entering the water in 4th. John O'Neill, I can tell by his tall, gangly figure running into the water. The Colorado Peaks, he's in 5th. It looks like that's Ben Canute of the Indy Cats, the tier wetsuit coming into the water in 7th. And now we'll pan back to AJ Bacco of the Cleveland Rock and Roll, who is leading this swim. You can see he has chosen to wear a wetsuit, unlike some of the ladies in this past race. AJ is from Cleveland. He represents the Cleveland Rock and Roll team. Joe, do you have any personal stories about AJ? Have you ever spent time with him?
I'm not sure they're fit for air, the stories I know. But as we're watching them move through the water, and then I'll get to the personal stuff in a minute. The ocean, I don't think watching it on TV gives you an accurate judge of how that ocean's a beast. You can't tame the beast. It looks calm, but these guys, while they're out there, they're getting mouthfuls of water and they're getting tossed around just by the waves, even if it looks like they have a relatively calm trip around the buoys.
Absolutely. No, it's absolutely brutal. We were talking earlier in the broadcast about how important dolphin diving was, sighting in the ocean versus a flat lake, and then also being able to maybe catch a wave, being able to body surf in. Now, the surf doesn't look very big on the screen, but those waves are about 5 feet tall. So the angle of the camera, the camera crew did a great job setting that up. And as we previously mentioned, these athletes, they have 3 buoys they have to go around. The first 2 buoys they need to keep on their right shoulder. And the third buoy, the final buoy that AJ Bacco just went around, they need to keep on their left shoulder. So the most important thing is that you want to go as fast as possible on this course. And now these athletes are going to find the fastest line of where they can get on the beach the quickest to start running. And as we begin to enter the first transition for this third leg of the Super Sprint Mixed Team Relay, how can you talk a little bit about getting out of your wetsuit quickly and what that entails? So the athletes face a relatively uphill run on the beach, maybe 100 meters or so, before they enter Kennedy Plaza in the transition area. How important is it to be able to get your wetsuit off quickly? Do you think that can make or break the race?
Oh, without a doubt. In a race of this distance, those small details, they take time, and they can take a lot of time if you mess something up or if you lose your focus, because it's the time counts the same whether you're swimming or whether you're taking off your wetsuit, and sometimes we can dismiss those kind of the task in between the swimming, the biking, the running, but the clock doesn't care.
Absolutely. So we see now Graham Pimentel of the Carolina Gliders, the youngest MLT athlete. He's a student athlete at Queen's University in Charlotte, exiting the water in second. It looks like Walter Schaefer of the Atlantic City Waves, your home team, in third place in that silver-sleeved Xterra wetsuit. And then it looks like our other teams are coming together here really towards the end of this swim, so it should be exciting. AJ's coming into transition now, kicking his feet out of that wetsuit. Remember, he needs to get his helmet on and clip before he touches his bike, which it looks like he has done. He's going to drop his wetsuit in that basket and now head out onto the start of the bike course. So, Joe, what is AJ thinking now? He's out in the front by himself, but he may know that some athletes are chasing close behind him. They may be working together. What is he thinking at this point?
Yeah, it's a nice transition there by AJ as you watch him find his feet on the bike. I think he's got to be thinking he's got to be focused on the task at hand. I think what you saw there as he moved through transition, he wasn't rushing. He was taking his time. He was going through his tasks, and that's actually the fastest way to do it, because when you rush, that's when you sort of tend to make mistakes.
Absolutely. One of my old coaches told me, be deliberate. Don't rush. Just be deliberate. If you do it right the first time, it will be a lot faster than doing it wrong quickly. So AJ just had a phenomenal first transition. There we see Walter Schaefer and his Specialized Venge coming off of the transition rack, heading out onto this 4-lap, 3.5-mile bike course. AJ Baco is reaching the end of the first straightaway on his bike course loop. He's going to head back past Bally's Beach Resort and Bally's Beach Bar on the opposite side of the boardwalk, back towards the Playground Pier in Kennedy Plaza, where all the action is happening at Major League Triathlon Atlantic City, presented by the Claridge, a Radisson hotel. So it looks like that this field in the middle of the pack is starting to come together a little bit, and what that can mean, so we have the first two athletes here, AJ Baco of the Cleveland Rock and Roll and Graham Pimentel of the Carolina Gliders. They're on their own, but it looks like we could have a couple of pairs of athletes working together. Joe, how much of a difference would it make on a course like this when you're working with even just one other person versus riding solo?
It makes a big difference, Dylan. Sometimes all you need is just a little bit of rest that'll make a big difference as you head into the run. And in triathlon, it's about energy savings, and it's like any endurance sport in that sense. It's you want to kind of extend this limited energy over a 20-minute period of time or so.
Yeah.
And it's how do you use that in a way that gets you to the finish line before your competitors. And I think what you see when they'll pack up like this is just that little rest while you're moving at the same speed, because you're getting those benefits of drafting. It makes a difference. You see from the flags on the boardwalk, the wind here is picking up a little bit.
Absolutely. And the wind actually, I don't know if this is fortunate or unfortunate for the athletes. When they're heading out away from Kennedy Plaza, away from the transition area, the wind will be at their back. So you see Ben Canute, he is heading in that direction. He has a tailwind right now. However, when they make that turn by Bally's Beach Bar, they'll have about 700 meters where they're riding straight into the wind. So I think, Joe, you would agree, that's where the athletes may want to be behind another athlete the most, that position where there's headwind. Because I think it's common in cycling for people to say that athletes, even if they're by themselves, can hold an advantage if they have a tailwind. But if they have a headwind, the advantage they have could be decreased much more rapidly than if there were no wind at all.
And I think what you're going to see is it's not. We might assume, it's good that two people can work together. You might see some games start to be played when they're in pairs of two, because one of the guys might say, you know what, you've been pulling every time we have a tailwind, and I'm pulling every time we're in a headwind. I'm not doing that anymore.
Absolutely, and that is one of the most important pieces in cycling on a road bike. You see these athletes are riding bikes similar to that of in the Tour de France, and it's a tactical game. The energy savings are huge. Just riding behind another athlete is 30% energy saved when there is no wind at all, and it exponentially increases when there's more wind resistance. Because, of course, when you're riding a bike, which you can see Ben Canute of the Indy Cats, another male Olympian alongside Joe in the Rio de Janeiro 2016 Olympic Games, he is battling mostly, the only thing holding him back from moving forward is wind resistance. And when there's a headwind, he has a lot more of that to face. So all of that frontal area, you see Walter Schaefer of the Atlantic City Waves now out on the course. I believe he is in third place. He may be in fourth place. I think Ben Canute of the Indy Cats passed him. But let's, while we have some time here on the bike course, go through the athletes who are the third legs of these teams. So the first team, we've mentioned AJ Baco. He grew up in Cleveland, relatively close to his previous teammate, Lindsey Jordanek, actually. And he lives and trains in Boulder, Colorado, where he's coached by Simon Lessing. The Colorado Peaks third athlete, or their second male, is John O'Neill, who he recently moved to Seattle, Washington. He just accepted a job with Expedia, so it will be interesting to see how his training's been going. He had a good performance at the last race, but he is from Vail, Colorado, which is actually where we are having our next event, Major League Triathlon Vail Valley. So I'm sure he will be excited to get out there, but this is a slightly different setting from the Rocky Mountains. The Sarasota Suns' third athlete is Michael Arishida. Michael just graduated from Texas A&M a year ago. He is a professional athlete, and he has come a really long way. He's coached by Greg Mueller of Team Innovative Endurance, and he's lived in Texas all his life until about 4 days ago. He just moved to South Bend, Indiana for the summer. Graham Pimentel is holding steady in second place. He is on the Carolina Gliders team, and as I mentioned previously, he's the youngest male member of the Major League Triathlon League this year in 2017. Dylan Nobbs is the California Cadence's penultimate leg. He is from California, but he just finished his junior year at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. So he trains at that Olympic Training Center that's out there. It's a beautiful facility. And he also receives an education as well, which is phenomenal. Dylan just actually got in a mountain bike crash a few days ago, so his forearms are a little bit torn up. It will be interesting to see if that has any effect as Dylan rides across the screen right now. So AJ Baco is actually a lap ahead of Dylan Nobbs. That was AJ who was sitting in behind Dylan Nobbs. And then moving on to the next team is the Puerto Rico Islanders. That was Robbie Webster, who just went around that 180-degree turn to head back out for another lap on that bike course. Robbie Webster lives and trains just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, in the Glendale area. Does most of his training by himself, but he was a member of the USA Triathlon Collegiate Recruitment Program before moving out there. So we see AJ Baco getting off the bike in first place, and he will be rearing to get going on this run. We'll see if he can have as good of a second transition as he had of a first. So he racked his bike by the saddle. Some people like to rack it by the hoods. Either way is acceptable. We can see he slid his racing flats on, helmet's in the box. Boom, he had a great transition. Doesn't look like there were any penalties involved there. Now it looks like Ben Canute had a monster leg on the bike.
Wow, an incredible ride from Ben.
Absolutely phenomenal. He had the fastest men's split at our race in Charlotte just a few weeks ago. But I would venture to guess he started about 30 seconds maybe behind AJ Baco. And the Indy Cats were in fourth place starting this leg. So Ben went by two athletes, and he not only went by them, they couldn't even hang with him. So we see Graham Pimentel of the Carolina Gliders in third place. He is that youngest member of the league I keep mentioning. You can see Novant Health powered by Exos on his kit. Champion System in the upper left-hand corner. Graham just finished his sophomore year at Queen's University. He's coached by Sonny Dyer, who's in charge of that program, as well as Trillium Multisport. Graham is an incredible athlete. He finished 18th at the World Junior Championships in Cozumel, Mexico, just about 9 months ago, and he's having a great season. He just moved back home to Naples, Florida. Yeah. So he's another guy from a beach town. But let's see. I think we've announced all the people from the third legs of this race. We'll talk a little bit about Walter Schaefer, who has found himself in fourth place. He started his leg in third. Lost a bit of time on the bike, but it looks like everybody did to Ben Canute. So Walter Schaefer is your hometown hero. He is in fourth place for the Atlantic City Waves. You could see broadly across their uniforms the Claridge Radisson Hotel. They are the presenting sponsor of this event. Nicknamed the Skyscraper by the Sea, this hotel rises 24 floors above the boardwalk. It is on the boardwalk. There's a big food truck festival going on there today. I'm sure all these athletes will be loving that after the race is over. But that is one of the oldest oldest hotels in Atlantic City. And it is one of the remaining few from the Boardwalk Empire. So it's amazing that it has survived this long. We've been in it all weekend. It's an incredibly beautiful hotel. And Walter Schaefer is proud to wear it on his chest. So, Joe, we see
well, I'll tell you what, Dylan, let me tell you what I see. I see Ben Canute's cadence on this run is on a different planet than anybody else on the course right now. I think he's still closing that gap down to AJ, who's removed the top to his shirt. And yeah. I did promise a personal story about the birthday boy and AJ Baco.
There he is in all his glory.
You see him with the bare chest and the tattooed sleeves. And he views racing as an expression of who he is. And one thing you see that as these athletes are racing for one another, you see the the grimace on his face. He's digging deep here, and he's the type of guy who has to do things all out. I remember when I was training with him back in 2012. We were at a triathlon. Actually, it was 2013. We were at a triathlon camp out in San Diego, and he would go all out in the training sessions, which is why I think we connected initially. And then we had an off day, and we sat down with a couple of our crew, and we were having lunch at this Mexican restaurant out in San Diego, and they had a 2-for-1 Corona special where you got a free shot of tequila. And AJ's the type of guy who sits down at that table and he orders 3 of them. And so that's the attitude you're seeing on display here as he's looking to summon every ounce of energy to try and maintain that lead on Ben Canute, who continues to close it down.
Absolutely. And I think AJ is a good example of a lot of athletes, not just in triathlon, but endurance sports specifically in general, because they typically tend to be those athletes who have obsessive personalities, right? Anything they do, they need to commit to it 100%, and they're just going to go for it. And I'm sure you saw similarly, if any of these athletes want to be the best, they need to commit everything to be the best.
You do, and that means something different to everybody. I think what you see in AJ's commitment is it's more than anything, it's pride. You have a tremendous pride in what you're doing, and I think as you watch Ben, wow,
yeah,
just an incredible leg.
What a leg! And
he showed right there why he was with the best in the world at the Olympics through the first two, through the swim and the bike.
Absolutely,
he came off the bike with all the medalists.
Ben Canute just put up what has to be, so far, though we don't see it on the screen, it has to be the fastest split of the male field at this Major League Triathlon Atlantic City, presented by the Claridge Radisson Hotel event. And he handed off in second place. He handed off to Alyssa Dela, who is also from Indiana. So they are both a member of the Indy Cats. She's from the Fort Wayne area of Indiana, but now calls Tryon, North Carolina home. And AJ Bacco, speaking about that pride that he had for himself as a person, he also clearly has it for his team, and his team is the Cleveland Rock and Roll. They are in first place. They're rocking out on this course. He handed off to Sarah Alexander, who is also from Cleveland. As we see Michael Arishida just dying on the beach right there, but he made it to hand off to Jillian Peterson, the last teammate for the Sarasota Sun. Walter Schaefer of the Atlantic City Waves handed off to Amy Darlington in third place, so he had a great run. And we see Graham Pimentel handing off to Amber Zimmerman. And so that is the Carolina Gliders team, who were once in first place. They are now looking to be in fourth place as these athletes are entering the water. This is the final leg of the race, and these athletes none of the athletes on the course in Major League Triathlon will be out in the Atlantic Ocean at all throughout the rest of this season in 2017 after these athletes are out of the water here. So we're starting to circumvent this open water swim course, and these athletes, as I mentioned previously, and I'm Dylan Sorensen, by the way. I'm with Major League Triathlon. I'm joined here by Joe Malloy, a 2016 Olympian for the U.S. and a local man himself to the area. These athletes start to circumvent this swim course. They are battling waves, the AC waves actually, who find themselves in third place. And we see the first two teams are pretty near to one another, and those two teams are the Cleveland Rock and Roll and the Indy Cats. The Atlantic City Waves started this swim in third. The first athlete, the Cleveland Rock and Roll, that is Sarah Alexander. She's in her second year as a pro and trains under Greg Mueller of Team Innovative Endurance, the same coach whom I mentioned about Michael Arishida. Sarah Alexander is leading this swim, and then we have Alyssa Dela, who happens to be her teammate on that squad, but they are not teammates today. Today they are fierce competitors, ladies and gentlemen, and Alyssa Dela, who is a former professional runner, this is her first year as a pro. She is doing a phenomenal job in holding her ground with Sarah Alexander. So they need to keep this buoy on their left-hand shoulder. But as it stands right now, Sarah Alexander of the Cleveland Rock and Roll and Alyssa Dela of the Indy Cats, or excuse me, that is Sonia Kent of the Indy Cats. Nope, that is Alyssa Dela. I misspoke twice. So we have Sarah Alexander of the Cleveland Rock and Roll in first, and Alyssa Dela of the Indy Cats, the two Midwest teams in first and second place, battling out here at Major League Triathlon Atlantic City, presented by the Claridge.
As they're coming to shore, it's going to be interesting to see if one of these girls can separate from the other with a wave. As Atlantic City, you see in the yet to round that final buoy. But a fascinating battle here for first place. It looks like they're going to head into this bike neck and neck.
Absolutely. This looks to be the field looks to be coming closer together, in my opinion, though it is a little bit difficult to tell with these camera angles. We see, looks like Sarah Alexander holding her ground. Alyssa Dela, there she is catching a wave. She's
there
just
you go.
Catapulted herself into first place, and I can speak from firsthand experience. There are no waves in Indiana. We are landlocked state surrounded only by Lake Michigan. And though that is a massive lake, it's not salty, and there aren't many big waves to be found on it. So hats off to her. The first two teams we have coming out of the water right now are the Indy Cats and Alyssa Dela, and the Cleveland Rock and Roll in Sarah Alexander.
As these athletes are coming ashore, Dylan, they're looking at the bottom, but they can't see the sand. It's dark when their heads are down. And what they're doing is they're swimming until their fingers touch the sand, and then they'll pop up, because they could lose too much time if they risk trying to spot the bottom off of sight. The water's often deceptive.
So once they do touch that sand, do they start running? What do they do?
They'll look to throw their feet right under their hips and try and pop up and run. And they want to get the secret to moving through the water is you want to get your knees out of the water to kind of overcome that resistance. Anybody who's tried to walk through a pool understands how taxing that can be, especially at the prospect of jumping on a bike.
Absolutely. So if my memory serves me correctly, you swam in college at Boston College. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So how would you compare swimming, and NCAA swimming, for all those out there, competes in a 25-yard pool. Flip turns are extremely important. But how would you compare swimming in a pool, a 25-yard pool, to swimming in the ocean?
Oh, it's the difference between going to see animals in a zoo and walking through the forest. It's night and day. What you're seeing out there is you take another look at that wave.
So when you're catching a wave, and Joe grew up here, he grew up next to the ocean. I'm sure Joe knows as well as anybody how to catch a wave. So, Joe, can you give our viewers a little bit of insight into how you would go about doing that?
Yeah, what you look for with those waves is they get steepest just before the top cracks over them. And you want to catch it when it's the steepest, because that's when the water is going to be able to carry your body weight. If you try and catch it too soon, you'll see the wave will kind of just roll right past. And if you catch it too late, once it turns white and cracks over itself, the water's very soft. There's a lot of air in there. And it doesn't give you any platform to kind of launch from.
Absolutely. So when they're in that wave, do they try to make their bodies almost extremely rigid like a surfboard, tighten their core, maybe do a streamline with their hands?
Exactly. You want to be nice and stiff and streamlined as you rock it towards the shore.
All right, that's great.
And now, as you're watching these girls navigate this bike course, it looks smooth, but I can tell you from experience, these boards are not made for bikes with tires the width of maybe a quarter inch. Most of the bikes you see on the boardwalk have the beach cruiser fat tires that are at least 1.5 inches wide. And these guys are bouncing around. They want to hang on to those handlebars because it's not an easy ride.
Absolutely, and I think hearing from most of the athletes, one of the things that they discussed doing because of that varied surface when compared to pavement, which is what these tires the athletes are riding are generally made for riding on, they spoke about reducing tire pressure a little bit, so there's a little bit more give in their tires. And then they also discussed that they were going to have to, they wanted to release that tire pressure, but then they also knew that the 180s were extremely important. And so there are nails that are on this boardwalk, which would hold each wooden plank down to the surface beneath it. And so they were talking about veering, making sure they were staying out of the line of those nails, because you never know when one of these nails is sticking up just a centimeter above the surface of the wooden boardwalk.
It's very interesting there, and as they go around the U-turns, it's also they're turning to where the traction they want on the tires is going with the grain of the wood, which is much slipperier than if you have a little bit more friction to grip. And you also, as you sit here and you can hear the bikes go by, what happens is these boardwalks are built on a series. It's not solid ground that all these boards are standing on. A lot of you'll go through maybe I would say 3 to 5 feet where there's nothing underneath, and then a big cement support beam, and then another 3 to 5 feet, and then another cement support beam, and then there's wooden planks that run in the opposite direction. So
right.
it's these boards, they look flat, but they're built underneath a lattice. So you can watch it. If you look at the ground, you'll see some of them shake, and they actually will go up and down as the bikes go by.
Absolutely, and that must be such a different and unique experience for these athletes racing on the course today. Joe, have you ever seen anything like this on the boardwalk where you're from?
I haven't, and that's what I love. It's such a great combination of these activities that everybody who visits these Jersey Shore communities in the summer, and they go for bike rides, they go for runs along the beach, they go for swims in the ocean. And triathlon, what we're doing here is it's all combined into a format that's entirely unfamiliar. They're riding bikes that are the same, but they look totally different. We talked about the tires. They're swimming in the ocean, but they're not wearing board shorts. They're wearing these spaceship look or spacesuit looking wetsuits. So it's a nice blend of what's activities that are very familiar to these spectators in a completely unfamiliar way. And I think that's where you see so much of this interest picking up along the boardwalk. You see people eating their Italian water ices, which are a popular snack down here.
Yeah, I just actually saw water ice the other day, Italian water ice, and I was perplexed at what it could be. But then I saw somebody having one, enjoying it, and boy, did I want it. So we just saw the current standings. It looks to be that Sarah Alexander of the Cleveland Rock and Roll, who are the team that won the first event in Charlotte, look to be coming in first place at the moment if they hold their advantage. She's joined now by Amber Zimmerman of the Carolina Gliders and Erin Dolan of the California Cadence. Those girls are not in second and third place. They're actually at least one lap behind. So one of the interesting tactical pieces of having a bike course that's this short and with this many loops is that when the race starts getting spread out a little bit, the competitors may become lapped, which you can see with the Carolina Gliders and the California Cadence right now. They are riding with the leader, but they're not in second place. This is second place. This is Alyssa Dela of the Indy Cats, and she is in second place. Tactically, what makes this so unique is that these athletes actually are allowed to draft off of one another, even if they're a lap down. So it is definitely has to be made game time decision, but how would you address those tactics? If you were Sarah Alexander, I would assume you would want to work with those two athletes even though they were a lap down, and maybe they would want you to work a little bit harder since you're in the lead.
It's a very nice situation Sarah Alexander has put herself in right here, because you do want to take advantage of whatever's out there on the course. As an athlete, that's what you're looking to do. You're looking to ways to make this situation work to your advantage, and that's what you see Sarah Alexander doing. Is Alyssa is gapped. Sarah decided to make a move on the bike. She's trying to win the race right here, and she has decided to pair up with the other two athletes, and you do see them rotating well through. I think at this point in the race, I think you're just glad to see friends, because these packs have been split up since we started, when all the guys were so tightly grouped together. So to see three athletes with an opportunity to work together, it's a good situation for Sarah.
Absolutely. And Sarah Alexander is the final competitor for the Cleveland Rock and Roll. She is the third member of 4 on that team who grew up in Cleveland. They are incredibly supportive, and as you can see her dismounting her bike in the background of the shot, now foreground. They are really looking forward to the championship event of our season, which is in Edgewater Park, in accordance with Neo Cycle, the nation's largest urban cycling festival. That is just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. So right now, the Rock and Roll look to be taking center stage yet again in the Major League Triathlon second edition of the 2017 season in Atlantic City, presented by the Claridge, a Radisson Hotel. So Sarah Alexander just headed out on her bike, and it honestly looks to me like Alyssa Dela may have, she looked to be a little bit closer than it might seem, actually, because she's not having the quickest transition, though she heads out onto the run with an unbelievable palmares, a resume in the running department. She by far has the fastest running personal best of this league. She's run a 10K under 33 minutes. She was one of the best female distance runners in the nation. She spent some time running at Michigan State before she went professional in that. But she is trying to use that to her advantage to chase down Sarah Alexander, who looks to have made almost an insurmountable gap throughout the bike portion of that event. So these two train together, but now they are their biggest competition. Joe, when you are competing in a mixed team relay, and Joe, for everybody out there, Joe actually was a member. He was the final leg of the 2016 World Champion mixed team relay team, which was Team USA. Joe, what was that experience in Hamburg like, taking home first place at a World Championship? And how would you say that might differ from an individual race where you would do the same?
I can tell you, Dylan, it's the most nervous I've ever been for a race in my life. Yeah, I was sitting there before my final leg at the Mixed Relay World Championship. And ultimately, it comes down to being able to use that nervous energy in a positive way. You see what you see when you're watching sports. You're watching these athletes express these emotions. And it becomes a matter of how can you control those emotions to work in a way that's productive. I'm sure as you're watching Sarah fight to hang on to this lead here, she's scared, but she's not scared for herself, because it's not her pride. It's the pride of her teammates. It's the pride of, she's wearing Cleveland,
She is.
And I can tell you, AJ, knowing his personality, he would not be an easy person to go back to if you give up this lead. So being able to use that nervous energy in a positive way, maybe it's to run 5 seconds faster. I think that's what you see Sarah trying to tap into here and on Alyssa's perspective, she's a young girl, just rode that bike course solo, and we're seeing right now, I think, how much that ride took out of her legs.
Absolutely. You could just see A.J. Bacco fiercely cheering on Sarah Alexander. He wants to make it 2-0. He wants to be undefeated. He wants her to win this event. She is just about halfway done with this run as she heads around another 180-degree turn, having to lose all of her momentum before gearing up again. We see Amy Darlington now of the Atlantic City Waves. She went to UPenn, was a steeplechaser there in their track program, ran at the Penn Relays, which is just down the road from here, maybe about an hour drive away if there's no traffic, which there hardly ever is. And then she actually just finished competing as an Arizona State Sun Devil with her 5th year of athletic eligibility, and where she helped them win the first ever NCAA team championship, which was incredibly cool to see triathlon becoming an NCAA sport for women. There are 8 teams around the country, and the first 2 at the first NCAA championships were the Arizona State Sun Devils and the Queens University Lions. They are in Charlotte, and that's actually the university that Graham Pimentel, another athlete in the league, attends. So we see now, we'll kind of run through the remaining competitors in this field. In the foreground, we have Jillian Peterson of the Sarasota Sun. She competed in Rio in the fall, though not at the traditional Olympic Games. She was a guide to a Paralympic athlete in triathlon, so she was able to compete on that large stage in a slightly different manner, and she was able to help somebody, much like she's helping her Sarasota Sun today in this race. Other anchor legs for the female athletes are Amber Zimmerman of the Carolina Gliders, Paula Finley of the Colorado Peaks. We have Adriana Barraza of the Puerto Rico Islanders, but right now it's all about Sarah Alexander of the Cleveland Rock and Roll. They are undefeated. They take center stage yet again. Sarah Alexander will hoist this banner above her head. Hug AJ Baco, the Cleveland natives. They are teamed up with Lindsey Jordanek and Greg Billington today, who is another male Olympian at the Rio de Janeiro Olympic Games this past summer. And we see what a close race. That was truly a phenomenal event. Alyssa Dela coming across the line in second, maybe just 15 seconds back of Sarah Alexander. So first 2 teams in are the Cleveland Rock and Roll and the Indy Cats. And the Colorado Peaks utilize Paula Finley to their great advantage. Paula was a 2012 Olympian with Canada. They come in 3rd place, and Paula had a tremendous race. She was by herself the entire leg and blitzed past a large portion of the field as we see Jillian Peterson blasting her way down this boardwalk. Joe, what's going through her head right now as she's in the final moments of this race?
I'll tell you what, Jillian, she's one of the more experienced athletes out there, and she knows what she's doing. She's right now just looking to get through that finish line, and these athletes, it's a evil finish, really. Coming up over that dune, you're used to running on the boardwalk, which gives you, at least we talked about the bouncy footing. At least that's something you can push off of. You go onto the sand on tired legs, and it kind of feels like you just want to fall flat on your face, and that'd be preferable. So she just wants to get to that line, and you watch Erin Dolan closing down behind her.
Absolutely. What a finish. This is so tight. We had the Sarasota Sun, then the California Cadence, then we have the AC Waves. Then we are through 6 teams now. I believe we're waiting on the Puerto Rico Islanders, and their anchor leg is Adriana Barraza, who comes here from Central Mexico. However, the Carolina Gliders beat her to the finish line, so that is 7th place, and the Puerto Rico Islanders will take 8th place in this field today. This was an extremely competitive event. I believe this was the closest event we've had so far, and it's wonderful. As you see, Lindsey Jordanek on the left, Greg Billington next to her, Sarah Alexander next to them, and AJ Baco in making up the 4-member team that is the Cleveland Rock and Roll. Greg Billington, as we mentioned earlier, is subbing in today for Kevin McDowell. They are right next to each other on the ITU points list in the 20s, ranked in the world, and Kevin is racing in Cagliari, Italy in a World Cup today, so he unfortunately could not be with us, but we wish him the best of luck. As you see the beautiful skyline of Atlantic City in the background, we pan over to Major League Triathlon's finish line, which is now zooming in on Boardwalk Hall. Joe, can you talk a little bit about Boardwalk Hall? What is inside this building? Boardwalk
Hall's got a storied history here on the Jersey Shore. It's really I would say the cornerstone of entertainment here in Atlantic City. You see all these casinos. They were basically built because of the tradition of entertainment that Boardwalk Hall brought to the South Jersey area. Absolutely. That's wonderful. And as Adriana Barraza of the Puerto Rico Islanders crosses the line, we now have all athletes off of the course. It will be truly remarkable how quickly the boardwalk transforms from the closed-off race course we had to the thousands of people
traversing it en route to the beach or a casino or maybe to get something to eat. So as it stands, the finishing order for the second race of the season, Major League Triathlon Atlantic City, presented by the Claridge Radisson Hotel, was the Cleveland Rock and Roll, the Indy Cats, the Colorado Peaks, the Sarasota Sun, the California Cadence, the Atlantic City Waves, the home team, Carolina Gliders, and then the Puerto Rico Islanders. We will cut down to the finish line momentarily, where we will see Mike Plant, who is one of the legends of the sport of triathlon. He was the announcer at the Ironman World Championships out in Kona for several years. He's written many books regarding the sport, one of those being Iron Will. I encourage all of you to read it. It's a phenomenal piece of writing. And he also created a lot of media exposure for the sport and was one of the major players in getting this sport popular on a global stage. And now we are incredibly thankful that he is choosing to support Major League Triathlon. So Joe, looking back on this event, how was your first experience with Major League Triathlon in person?
I'll tell you what, it's a blast, and I think one of the things we saw, you see the athletes, they learn a little bit about the course as the race unfolds from their teammates. They kind of have, by the end, you're getting advice from two people who have just done this course on how to attack it, how the changing wind is making it different, how different parts of the bike section feel. You saw the athletes. I don't think we had any crashes on the boardwalk today, which is really impressive.
Yeah.
But I think it's an electric atmosphere that Major League Triathlon has really set up here in Atlantic City. I think you saw how it captivated the attention of so many of these pedestrians. We're looking at Boardwalk Hall again, where so many Miss Americas have been crowned, and then took that honorary dip right out in the ocean where our athletes competed.
Absolutely. So, what a wonderful statement. And we know now Marisol Casado, the president of the International Triathlon Union, they are putting every effort forth into getting the Super Sprint mixed team relay into the next Summer Olympic Games, which is just 3 years away now in Tokyo in 2020. That is the same format as this event, and we are putting every effort that we can as well to support them in that endeavor. So if you use the hashtag #TryMixedRelays, it will help the support of getting that event as added as another triathlon medal event in the Olympic Games. Looking down the boardwalk, Joe, there's a lot of history here. And one of the things that Atlantic City is famous for is its saltwater taffy. Now, I was reading the other day that the way that started, there was a guy who had a taffy shop and it got flooded. There was a hurricane. His shop got flooded and the taffy was covered in salt. And he didn't have any other product. And so when people came in after it wasn't flooded anymore to buy the product, he just kind of went with it, sold the saltwater taffy as it was, and they loved it, so he just kept it up. Do you think that's true at all, or do you think that's just folklore?
Who am I to dispel Jersey folklore? I will tell you, it's tasty. Just watch your teeth with it, and it's a great snack to bring home to relatives and friends, because unlike some of the treats where chocolate might melt on the car ride home, sitting in the sun, the saltwater taffy, you can pretty much do anything to it, and you'll still be able to eat it. So you see, that's it. It's the saltwater taffy, the water ice. Those are the flavors of the Jersey Shore that taste awfully good after what are usually some late nights here in Atlantic City and other shore towns. I'm looking here, and you see the screens advertising the different attractions coming to Atlantic City. I think they are lucky to have an event like Major League Triathlon coming to this area and providing free entertainment for so many people here.
So you can see a little bit of this boardwalk where we've got this shot from the ground right now. You can see a little bit of that wood that's raised up. Joe was talking about that. The planks are maybe 10 feet long or so, but they're only a few inches wide. So there are millions of planks comprising this 7-mile long boardwalk. We will hopefully be having some finish line interviews, and now we are here with Mike Plant.
Greg Billington. Greg, come on over here. You got things started in a big way. You look really strong out there from the very beginning. How'd that feel?
Oh, it was a great time. You know, there's a lot of really good athletes out here, and just trying to rise to their level and push myself really hard. It was an awesome day. You guys just set up a great course.
Yeah, well, how was it like? What was it like riding on the boardwalk out there?
Oh, it was awesome. It adds a nice little unique element to that. You don't do that often. Usually it's cobbles or pavement, but this time, thinking outside the box, onto the wood. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was something else. Lindsay Jordanek. Lindsay, you were number 2, and you did a nice job of keeping them in the running. I mean, good race.
Greg set us up really well by just being right at the front, and so it was more match race with the old story. So on the swim, we swam together, and after the first bike lap, that's when I created a separation, and at that point, I was just sitting back, as much time moving.
Did you feel as strong on the run as you look? Because you look really strong on the run. It looked like you liked that boardwalk.
Well, thank you. Just felt pretty hard. That's all I can say.
No, you did a fantastic job. AJ, come on over. That was you were blown away on the run out there. It didn't look like anybody was going to get even close to you.
I was certainly trying my best. I was running a little scared because Ben was barreling down on me. I thought I was doing well, but every time I went to an out and back, he was getting a little bit closer and a little bit closer. So I was definitely nervous the whole time, but I was able to hold on the best I could, and it was just enough, so it was good.
Yeah, that 3 laps gets a little bit scary because the guy behind never loses sight, and you don't lose sight either.
No, not at all. And every single time I passed him, he just looked straight at me, and I could tell he was trying to intimidate me. So that was fun, though. I like racing a guy like Ben. It was cool having him barrel down on me better than anyone else, I suppose. So.
Yeah, that looked like fun. It was a great competition. Sarah, come on over. You finished up really strong. It didn't look like you were giving up anything. Again, you looked very comfortable. What was it like riding the bike on the boardwalk?
It was much smoother than I anticipated, actually, and super fun to have the spectators kind of right there. I knew coming out onto the bike with Alyssa on my heels, she's a super strong cyclist, so I was kind of focused on just hammering as much as I could, and luckily had a couple of people to ride with here and there, which always helps, if not physically, then mentally, to, take a breather. So, yeah, it was great. Great day out there.
And very smooth on the run. You looked well controlled the whole way. Did it feel good?
Thank you. Yeah. I wasn't really focused as much on how it felt as just keeping tabs on the gap to the women behind me. I've been focusing and training a lot on staying more relaxed running, and that's we haven't done a lot of work on the run, so it's probably my most insecure part, but I was glad to put down a good performance today.
Well, you were a heck of an anchor. You did a great job. For the second race in a row, the Cleveland Rock and Roll coming in first with a commanding lead now in the MLT 2017. This is Mike Plant. Dylan, back to you.
All right, he's out.
Thank you, Mike. That was some great interviewing we just had. Got some personal insight into the 2-time winners of the first 2 races. The Cleveland Rock and Roll have won MLT Charlotte and now MLT Atlantic City, presented by the Claridge, a Radisson Hotel. As we pan back, we can see the Taj Mahal, Atlantic Palace, Bally's Beach Resort, the playground pier. Then we'll look back through transition a little bit, where Sarah Alexander was prepping herself. The men started us off today with 8 athletes heading out into a brutally difficult course. We had one of the athletes falter a bit on the beach, but he quickly made that up. Most of them were together towards the end of the swim, where, as Joe discussed, Joe Malloy, the Olympian here with us today, swimming in the ocean is a completely different beast than the pool, and while these athletes are used to swimming in open water, the ocean is the most epic form of open water. The first leg saw Greg Billington catch Graham Pimentel and Rudy Von Berg of the Carolina Gliders and the Sarasota Sun, before Greg Billington handed off in first to Lindsay Jordanek, who was joined for a little while with Aaron Story of the Carolina Gliders. However, she managed to distance herself from the Carolina Gliders and Erin Story on the bike of the second leg of this relay before handing off in first. And this is that tag for from Erin Story to Graham Pimentel of the Carolina Gliders going into the third leg of the race. AJ Bacco held that lead that Lindsey Jordanic summoned from her performance through to the spike and then as well onto the run, where he ripped off his jersey because he clearly wanted to get a nice tan on today. Ben Canute had a stellar performance, coming from fourth, about 45 seconds back, all the way up, back almost into first place. He handed off in second before Sarah Alexander took off on her leg and did not look back before she crossed the tape to take the second victory in as many races for the Cleveland Rock and Roll. She was briefly challenged. If the run had been a little bit longer, Alyssa Dela, a stud runner, may have caught her. These two ladies are training partners, so I'm sure they're thrilled for one another, but I'm guarantee you Alyssa Dela wishes she could have had a few extra steps to make up some ground on that run. This course was in Atlantic City, New Jersey, on the beautiful beach and boardwalk of what is known as the oldest world boardwalk, not only in the country but the world. And the athletes traversed about a mile-long section of this on their bikes, their road bikes, and in their running shoes before coming across the beach on the finish line. Where else could you end this race than the beach in Atlantic City? The Cleveland Rock and Roll held the banner above their head as they took center stage, were the main act of this event. You can see just how many people are enjoying the first real weekend of summer, that first weekend after Memorial Day. We have hundreds of people out on the beach. Joe, what are these people going to be up to today?
Oh, what you see is a mix there of families, bachelor parties, bachelorette parties. It really doesn't take any particular demographic to come down here to the Jersey Shore and have a good time.
Absolutely, and though the population may be small, I believe it's around 40,000, on any given weekend in the summer, there could be hundreds of thousands of people here for any mixture of events. Just right now, we had Major League Triathlon Atlantic City presented by the Claridge at Radisson Hotel going on, but there's also a massive food truck festival which was looking to bring in 20,000 people, and that's also being put on by the Claridge at Radisson Hotel. Another event being put on by the Claridge at Radisson Hotel is a massive beach volleyball tournament just up the boardwalk from where the athletes completed one of those 180-degree turns at the end of our bike course. Atlantic City is a thriving destination, and they're really revamping themselves, trying to remake the city and revitalize the area to get it back to the prominence that it once was. That was one of the biggest reasons why we wanted to be a part and have a race in Atlantic City, because has an amazing history. It's an incredible piece of the American culture is Atlantic City, this boardwalk, the people here, the beaches, the piers, the casinos, these amazing hotels like the Claridge at Radisson Hotel. It was built by John McShane, who is considered the man who built Washington. He actually built the Jefferson Memorial. He built the Pentagon. He reconstructed the White House in the late 40s and early 50s. Unbelievable place is Atlantic City. It's accessible all over the eastern seaboard, that megalopolis that is D.C., Philadelphia, New York, Boston. It's easy to transport yourself here, and as you can see, during the summers, it is absolutely gorgeous. I think the temperature's right around 73, 74 degrees right now. There are thousands of people walking around this boardwalk, and it has been a pleasure having you all here today. The athletes are now getting ready for the podium ceremony, where they'll celebrate a little bit before they shower back at the Claridge at Radisson Hotel, our title sponsor for this event, and then head to Ducktown Tavern, which is hosting our after party today. That is a very popular local establishment known for its St. Paddy's Day festivals. There's a lot where they have a permanent storage unit that they've created. They've opened it up so the sides of it open up like butterfly doors on a car, and there's a bar inside. We're gonna have a DJ there. Joe, hopefully you'll join us there. I don't know what your plans are, but as far as right now, the race is over for these athletes. The reason they came here was this race. So what are they feeling? I know that you mentioned they were nervous before the race, and hopefully they use that nervous energy in a positive manner to move them forward in each discipline. But what are they thinking right now?
I'll tell you what, for the first time they're turning off. I think you're going to see the athletes start to really appreciate the natural beauty of this place. They're going to sit here, lay their towels out, enjoy some time on the beach, maybe some drinks on the boardwalk, and kind of hopefully just take a few moments to enjoy the contrast between these tall buildings and this gorgeous beach. It's striking to be able to sit on the beach and be surrounded by all this natural beauty, but then look up and see a building 30 stories high.
Absolutely, no, that's great. You can see behind Aaron Story and Sarah Alexander are Dan Feeney and Melissa Matza, who actually just got engaged a couple weeks ago. So
we want to congratulate them.
Absolutely, congratulations to Dan Feeney. He races for the Puerto Rico Islanders, and he is pursuing a PhD at the University of Colorado Boulder.
And marrying up.
Marrying up, absolutely. She ran for the University of Delaware, was a stud runner, and she actually has just taken up triathlon. She herself is doing a master's program at the University of Colorado Boulder, I believe in exercise physiology, so some sports science there. They're both brilliant. We call Dan Dr. Dan here in MLT. But one of the things I think that's unique about MLT, and it's a little similar at every race where you have the athletes being more friendly to one another after the race is over versus before the race starts. But at Major League Triathlon, it's really a family. Part of that comes from the athletes all living, training, and doing a lot of the same races. But all these athletes, they have a common language, and they all support one another. So even though they're on 8 different teams, there's really 32 athletes that make up a family here at MLT, and we truly love that. Even we had 8 athletes here who weren't originally part of the league that were replacing others due to injury or maybe racing in a World Cup, but they fit right in. And one of the things I think the athletes love most about MLT is that comfort that they have in knowing the character is going to be solid of the athletes that they're racing against.
Yeah, Dylan, this is racing in color. It's a race format that allows personalities to show and shine through. I mean, where else could AJ rip off his top for a run? I guarantee he wasn't doing that for the heat.
No.
And,
might have wanted to show his tattoos off.
Yeah, you see a little bit of the personalities, and in a way that comes through that really can only happen when you're racing for people other than yourself.
Absolutely. And we see, I know AJ Baco, he sure has a lot of tattoos. I think that may have stemmed from, fun fact about AJ, he was a member of a punk rock band for about 5 years before he got into triathlon. And with that same 100% commitment that he had to triathlon, he will be the first to tell you he had it for his punk rock band. They toured around the country, did all the kind of things that rock bands are notorious for doing. And now I think his life might look a little bit different with all the swimming, biking, running, and sleeping he's doing now. So these athletes are sitting in Kennedy Plaza, which is a beautiful bit of the boardwalk just next to Playground Pier. It's really in between Playground Pier and the Tropicana, 2 of the more iconic pieces of the Atlantic City boardwalk. Joe, do you have any experiences? Have you done any events in Kennedy Plaza? What have you seen here before? I know there's a little mini golf business that's here, and I definitely want to catch some of that later. But when you think of Kennedy Plaza, what do you think of?
I'll tell you what, you can be at the mini golf. I'll be at that Duck Tavern. Duckworth, what's it called?
Ducktown Tavern.
Ducktown Tavern. Yeah. I don't forget the name of a bar around here. So, we used to, growing up, we used to have a bunch of lifeguard competitions up and down the Jersey Shore, and there was always one here in Atlantic City.
Awesome,
and
that's cool.
So I have a lot of experience racing in these waters and running on the sand, and I'm happy for these guys that they get to see what it's like and enjoy it, because you're out there in that ocean and you look, there's really not too many views that are like looking in on the Atlantic City skyline from the ocean.
Absolutely. And here in Kennedy Plaza, people can look through these beautiful, seemingly ancient columns. It's a really beautiful piece of architecture is Kennedy Plaza. There's a semicircle of ruined-looking cement, almost Roman columns. Looks like the outside of a coliseum or something of that nature, which fittingly it was today, as all of the teams competed against each other in a winner-take-all match at Major League Triathlon Atlantic City. Here we see the Colorado Peaks celebrating their third-place performance. They actually were second place at the first event of the season, which I believe will place them in second overall in the series. Each team earns a given amount of points based on their place at every race. And it doesn't matter how the individuals do at each race. It matters how the team finishes. So you get 100 points for first, and then going down to 8th place, you knock off 2 points each time. So 8th place would make 86 points. Here we see the Indy Cats, who are comprised of Ben Canute, Alyssa Dela, Robbie Deckard, and we have Sonia Kent. The Indy Cats today were highlighted by strong performances across the board, but Ben Canute really was the highlight of their team, I would say. He took them from 4th to 2nd, and ultimately they stayed there. But you have to give it to their team. Their whole team put together a consistent performance, and they seem to have lined up by height here, which is truly interesting, I would say. And we saw Alyssa Dela on the ultimate leg, the final leg. She had a tremendous run, maybe had the fastest run split in the women's race. She almost caught Sarah Alexander for first, and we will see the Cleveland Rock and Roll up here momentarily, but unfortunately she did not. So you see the MLT medals on these athletes. Sonia Kent, this was her Major League Triathlon debut. It's pretty hard to beat that. However, one athlete who did beat it was Greg Billington of the Cleveland Rock and Roll. He had a phenomenal leg. AJ Baco took matters into his own hands, keeping first place. But really, Sarah Alexander took home the tape, and Lindsay Jordanic, I would say, separated from the field and was really the centerpiece of this team today.
Yeah, Dylan, this Cleveland Rock and Roll team was the class of the field all day today. They were never far from – they were at the front the entire day, while there was a bunch of shuffling with the teams behind them. Just really impressive performances.
Yeah, they had a tremendous performance, all 4 athletes. And with that, we have the top 3 teams on the podium together.
Not a bad debut for Greg Billington at Major League Tri, huh?
Not a bad debut at all. We hope to see him back in the league maybe next year. He is going to compete at the Escape from Alcatraz Triathlon, which coincidentally the guy sitting next to me, Joe Malloy, was victorious at last year, if I remember correctly, right?
I was.
Yes.
Yeah, the defending champion. I unfortunately won't be lining up this year, and
that's totally cool. Joe is enjoying himself in other ways this year. So after the first 2 races, the teams that are the placing for the teams in the league are the Cleveland Rock and Roll in first, the Indy Cats in second, the Atlantic City Waves in third, the Sarasota Sun in fourth, California Cadence in fifth, Carolina Gliders in sixth, Colorado Peaks in seventh, and the Puerto Rico Islanders in eighth. This actually might have been, this was the result just specifically from today, so not the unofficial results of the standings for the league so far, but this was the result from today. MLT Atlantic City, presented by the Claridge, a Radisson Hotel. We want to thank all of you for joining us. Joe, thank you for joining us. I'm Dylan Sorensen from Major League Triathlon, and we can't wait to see you at MLT Vail Valley on August 26th in the beautiful Rocky Mountains.